We all love a good strawberry, but um, have you ever really thought about them? Like where they come from? I mean, their history goes back millions of years, sure. But the strawberries we enjoy today, the ones we buy at the store, their story is surprisingly recent.
Yeah, it's true. And get this, they aren't even really berries.
Whoa, wait, what?
Yeah, it's true. So a berry, a real berry, like a blueberry, comes from a single ovary in the flower, right? But with a strawberry, the red part that we eat, it actually comes from the part of the plant that holds the ovaries.
Oh,
Yeah,
eh,
it's called the receptacle. And those tiny little seeds on the outside, those are actually the real fruits. Each one has a tiny seed inside.
so each one of the little things is technically a fruit. Huh, that's wild.
Yeah, it's one of those little fun facts that makes you think about strawberries a little differently. And their origin story is just as unusual. The garden strawberry, the one we're all familiar with, it's actually a relatively new invention.
Right, I did read something about that in the Wikipedia article. Remind me again how that happened.
Okay, so picture this. It's the 1750s, and we're in France, and this new fruit is about to be born.
Okay.
A French explorer had brought back a variety of strawberry from Chile, and when they crossed it with a variety from North America, they created what would become the ancestor of almost every single strawberry we eat today.
Interesting. So what was so special about that Chilean strawberry? What did it bring to the table that made it so, I don't know, special?
It turns out that the Chilean strawberry had something other varieties in Europe didn't. It was really good at resisting diseases,
Ah,
which
interesting.
European varieties really struggled with. So this crossbreeding, it was like the key to making a strawberry that was both delicious and could actually be grown reliably. A real plant breeding success story.
That's fascinating. I never knew there was so much history behind strawberries.
Oh, and it goes back even further. There are records of strawberries being used in ancient Rome.
Really?
Yeah, though back then they were mostly a medicinal thing.
Like what? Were they prescribing strawberry smoothies for a cold or something?
Not quite smoothies, but they did believe strawberries could help with inflammation, bad breath, all sorts of things.
Huh, interesting.
And it wasn't just the Romans who were fascinated by them. During the Middle Ages, strawberries started popping up in European art. Intricate illustrations, beautiful still life paintings, you name it.
Wow. They really seem to capture people's imaginations. But they weren't just admiring them, right? I read that they were a favorite treat in Tudor England. Like, wasn't that where strawberries and cream came from?
You're right. The story goes that one of King Henry VIII's advisors introduced strawberries and cream to the English court. Imagine that these lavish banquets, opulent palaces, and then this simple but decadent dessert becomes a royal favorite.
I love it. It's amazing to me how something we enjoy so casually today has such a long history. But it wasn't just the taste that intrigued people, right? Like, didn't scientists get curious about how strawberries reproduce?
Exactly. It wasn't until the 17th century that botanists finally figured out how strawberries reproduce. Turns out they have separate male and female plants, which is different from a lot of other plant species.
Wow, that's pretty incredible for them to discover.
They were true pioneers. Their work changed our understanding of plants and paved the way for more intentional breeding, which ultimately led to the strawberries we have today. But speaking of today's strawberries, did you know there's a whole world of flavor and nutrition hidden inside them?
I was just about to ask about that. Okay, so we've talked about how strawberries aren't really berries, their history, all that. But what about their nutritional value? I know they're a good source of vitamin C, but what else is in there?
Well, you might be surprised to learn just how nutrient-packed they are. We tend to think of strawberries as a sweet treat, but they're also a good source of manganese, for example.
Manganese. What's that?
It's a mineral that's important for our bones, our metabolism, and it even helps protect our cells from damage. It's kind of like a little multivitamin.
Nice. A multivitamin you actually want to eat.
Mm.
But what about those tiny seeds, the achenes? Those have to be good for something, right?
You're right to be curious about the achenes. Not only are they technically the actual fruits, like we talked about earlier, but they also have essential fatty acids.
Really? Wow, I had no idea.
It's a great example of how even the smallest parts of a plant can pack a nutritional punch. Speaking of surprises, the world of strawberry flavor and fragrance is pretty incredible.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What makes strawberries smell so good?
It's actually a combination of over 30 different compounds that create that strawberry aroma.
Wow, 30.
Yeah. They all come together kind of like a complex perfume, with each compound adding its own little note to the mix.
So when I'm smelling a strawberry, I'm basically experiencing this whole symphony of scents.
Exactly. And, a lot of the breeding research these days actually focuses on trying to recreate that super intense, almost perfume-like fragrance that you find in wild strawberries.
Really? So you're saying like the strawberries we buy in the store are less fragrant than wild ones?
Yeah, some would say that cultivated varieties have lost a bit of that complex aroma over time.
Huh, interesting. Speaking of different strawberries, the article also mentions strawberry allergies, which are no fun.
Right. Unfortunately, strawberries are a problem for some people.
Yeah, the article said some people even have anaphylactoid reactions, which sounds pretty scary.
It shows how complex our relationship with food can be. Something that's a real treat for one person can be a serious health concern for someone else.
Exactly. It's good that researchers are working on hypoallergenic strawberries then, isn't it?
Absolutely. It would be incredible if everyone could enjoy strawberries without having to worry.
And I read that some of these new hypoallergenic strawberries are white or pale yellow, even when they're ripe.
Yeah, they lack the protein that makes them red, which is also what triggers a lot of the allergic reactions.
That's pretty wild.
Uh-huh.
So we've covered a lot here. We've talked about what strawberries actually are, their history, their nutrition, even how they smell. What else is there to know about these things?
Well, we've talked about eating strawberries, but now let's talk about how they're grown. Strawberry cultivation is a world of its own.
Okay, lead the way. Okay, strawberry farming. It's probably more complicated than it seems, right?
It's definitely more than just sticking a seed in the ground and hoping for the best. There are actually a few different ways to grow strawberries, and they all have their pros and cons. The article mentioned something called the plasticulture system.
Yeah, that caught my eye too. Plasticulture. It doesn't sound very environmentally friendly. What is that exactly?
It's a very modern approach. Imagine raised beds covered in plastic sheeting. Not exactly what you picture with, like, rolling strawberry fields, huh?
Not quite. So what's the deal with the plastic?
Well, it actually does a few things. It helps keep weeds away from the strawberry plants so they don't have to compete for nutrients, and it helps keep the soil from eroding. It also helps the soil hold on to moisture. It's kind of like making a little controlled environment for the strawberries.
That makes sense, I guess, if you're thinking about efficiency. But I'm sure there are some downsides, like with the environment.
Yeah, you're right. There are definitely some concerns about what happens to all that plastic, after the strawberries are harvested. Getting rid of it can be tough. And, of course, it does contribute to plastic waste. It's a real issue, so a lot of farmers are looking for ways to do it more sustainably.
So what are the alternatives? Like, how were strawberries grown traditionally?
Think more like your grandfather's garden. The more traditional way is with matted rows. Basically, the strawberry plants are allowed to just grow naturally, and they create a mat of runners. It's a much more natural approach, than the plasticulture system.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more like what I imagine for a strawberry farm. But is it as efficient?
Well, that's the trade-off. Matted rows, they need more space, obviously, and that's not always possible for big farms. They also require more work, for things like weeding and actually picking the strawberries.
Yeah.
And you don't get as many strawberries at the end.
So it's a trade-off between doing what's best for the strawberries and what's, I guess, practical for the people growing them. Are there any methods that are kind of in between? Something that combines the best of both worlds?
Definitely. There are some really cool techniques being tried out. Have you ever heard of growing strawberries in compost socks?
Compost socks. What in the world is that?
So picture a long tube, and it's filled with compost,
Yeah.
really nutrient-rich compost. Then you have strawberry plants growing up the sides. It's basically a vertical strawberry garden.
That's amazing. It sounds perfect for people who don't have a lot of space, like in a city. Are there any other benefits to growing strawberries like that?
Actually, yeah. Besides being great for small spaces, it's also super sustainable. That compost gives the plants all the nutrients they need, and then when the season's over, you can just compost it again, so it's a nice closed loop. Plus, get this, some studies have shown that strawberries grown this way are even more nutritious than ones grown the regular way.
Really? No kidding.
Yeah.
So more flavor and more nutrition. That's amazing.
Exactly. And speaking of amazing strawberries, the article also mentioned a specific type of strawberry, the Kashubian strawberry.
The Kashubian strawberry. Where's that from? What's so special about it?
It's from Poland, and it's all about flavor. This variety is known for having a really intense taste and aroma, and it's all because of the climate and the soil where it grows. In fact, they're so proud of this strawberry that it was the very first Polish fruit to be given special status by the European Union.
Wow, they must be really proud.
Yeah, they are. But as great as all this is, strawberry farming has its challenges.
Oh, right. what was it, over 200 pests that like to munch on strawberry plants?
Yeah, something like that. It's a never-ending battle to keep those plants healthy. They've got to deal with everything from tiny little bugs to bigger pests like slugs. And then there are things like powdery mildew and other diseases that can hurt the plants too.
Really makes you appreciate how much work goes into getting those strawberries to us,
Yeah.
you know?
It really does. But even with all those challenges, there's a lot of hope for the future. People are working on developing new varieties of strawberries that are more resistant to pests and diseases and figuring out ways to deal with the problems more sustainably.
That's good to hear. So what have we learned today about strawberries?
Well, we've learned that they're more interesting than they seem. They're pretty fascinating from a botanical point of view. They have this long, rich history, and growing them is a lot more complex than you might think. And of course, they're delicious and nutritious.
Absolutely. This deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's amazing what you can learn about something you think you know.
I know, right? It just goes to show sometimes the most fascinating stories are hidden in the most ordinary things.
That's a great place to wrap things up. This has been The Deep Dive, and we'll be back next time with another fascinating topic to explore.